Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces on this call. Thank you for joining me to discuss this historic funding made possible through the bipartisan infrastructure law, which Democrats passed last Congress. We'll take your questions at the end of the event, and feel free, if we should miss a question or if there was one you think of later, we'll have multiple opportunities through our link to come back and answer those questions and get those to you that we may not have a full answer for today, but every question will be answered in one way or another. I want to thank our dear friend, former Mayor of New Orleans, former Lieutenant Governor of the state of Louisiana, and now Senior Advisor to the President of the United States for Infrastructure, for making this time in his schedule to speak with us today about the importance of this funding in our home state of Louisiana. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is the largest long-term investment in our infrastructure and competitiveness in nearly a century, the largest investment since the very creation of the interstate system. The need for action in Louisiana is clear. And at our state level, data demonstrates that this bill will deliver results for everyone throughout the state of Louisiana. For decades, infrastructure in our state has suffered from the systemic lack of investment. In fact, the American Society of Civil Engineers gave us the grade of D+. Fortunately, we now have a solution, an opportunity to fix that. We know that this poor grade on our infrastructure report card is something that we can fix. The bipartisan infrastructure law will make life better for millions of Louisiana residents, create a generation of good paying union jobs and economic growth, and position the United States to win the 21st century, specifically what it will do for our infrastructure in our country. Rebuild and repair roads and bridges, improve healthy, sustainable transportation options, build a network of EV chargers, help connect every American to reliable, high-speed internet, prepare more of our infrastructure for the impact of climate change, cyber attack, and extreme weather events, deliver clean drinking water to every American, and eliminate the nation's lead service lines and pipes that damage our communities and damage our young people. Improve our nation's airports, creating opportunities for the largest single investment in HBCUs in the history of our country. We need infrastructure that we can count on, and that's why I'm so proud to have advocated and voted for this transformative legislation. We've already begun to see real results in our state since this passage, and I'm so excited to share the mic now with our dear friend, an incredible leader, someone that has taken our task, our mission to the White House as he carries it every single day, the Honorable Mitch Landrieu.
Congressman, thank you so much. And it's great to see so many familiar faces. I wish I could tell each and every one of you hello individually, but please accept my collective hello. First of all, I'm coming to you from the White House. Congressman Carter is coming to you from our nation's capital. I assure you, Louisiana is well represented in the White House. Shalonda Young, who runs the government, the head of Office of Management and Budget, is from Baton Rouge. The ambassador to the United Nations is from Clinton. And we got a whole host of other folks up here. Ryan Burney, who's on the call, is my senior advisor. Zach Butterworth was my executive counsel when I was mayor of the city of New Orleans. He's working for the Office of Public Engagement. And of course, Congressman Cedric Richmond, just left us a short time ago, but he was leading the effort on behalf of the president as well. So we're keeping a really keen eye out and have a keen understanding for what the people of Louisiana need. On behalf of the president, let me thank you, Congressman Carter, for helping pass this once-in-a-generation bill. It wouldn't have happened without you. We continue to thank you for helping us get the money to the ground, to the folks where they live in a way that it matters. So thank you for that. Most of you hopefully saw the president's State of the Union address. The State of the Union is strong. He ran because he wanted to unite the country. He ran because he wanted to rebuild the backbone of the country. He ran because he wanted to restore the soul of the nation. And I think that you'll agree with me if you listened to his speech the other night that we have made tremendous progress in the last 2 years. It's been a hell of a time for all of us in this country, really for the last 6 years. And then when we had the president trying to get into office with an insurrection in its way, putting the most diverse cabinet together, having COVID killing too many of our mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters on the eve of a war in the Ukraine, the president and his team got to work And in a reasonably short period of time, the president's been able to create 12.1 million jobs. I want to benchmark, that's more jobs that have been created in the 2 years of the Biden presidency that have been created in the 4 years of every other presidency in the history of the country. The unemployment rate is the lowest it's been in the last 50 years. We've created 800,000 manufacturing jobs, which means that we're bringing jobs back home. We're beginning to build things here in America with American-made products. And we're making sure that this money gets into communities that have been left behind for many, many, many years. I was just counting, Troy said, and many of you know, I served in the legislature for 16 years. But since I've been around, we've had 8 presidents: Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, of course, Obama, Trump, and now President Biden. I have never seen this level of money flowing into the state of Louisiana, much less every other state in the nation, to build the things that have gotten away from us for so long. So when the congressman started off, he mentioned that this is a once-in-a-generation bill. I actually look at that 2 ways. First of all, we haven't seen this kind of investment in rebuilding our infrastructure. And you don't need to be from anywhere but Louisiana to know that we have bridges that are crumbling. We got way too many potholes. We really have systems that don't work: sewer, water, drainage systems. I mean, this bill was designed for states just like Louisiana, and it's been 50 years. So it's a once-in-a-generation bill from that perspective, but it's also a once-in-a-generation opportunity because we may not see it again, which is why we are really compelled to make sure that we get this money out of the door and get down to the ground. That's the president's mission that he gave to me and to our team. So my job is basically to do 3 things: build a team across America to get the money out the door, and then to tell the story about what's happened so people know that it's actually happening so that we can do it again. On the build the team side, I have 14 cabinet secretaries that report directly into our task force. We're trying to make it easy to work with the federal government so that when you come up here, you don't have to talk to 15 different people. We've got a one-stop shop. I've worked with every governor in the country and asked them, and Governor John Bel Edwards has done this, has appointed an infrastructure coordinator that he has in his office to help facilitate the money when it gets down to the state level. I've talked to the mayors of Louisiana, as I have with mayors all across the country, because that's the team of people that's actually going to get the money down to the ground. The next thing is getting the money out of the door. We've hit the ground running. In the last 14 months, we've pushed out $200 billion. We have 20,000 projects that have been funded in the country, and you can see the projects coming out of the ground as we speak. As a matter of fact, right now, the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, is actually on the Calcasieu Bridge, delivering a fairly substantial amount of money to start having retrofitting that bridge. Yesterday, the governor and Secretary Sean Wilson were on I-20 right outside of Barksdale Air Force Base. And there are a whole list of other projects that have been sent to Louisiana. Billions of dollars have already been sent to the state, but the money comes down basically 2 ways. One, through formula funding that goes straight to the governor. The governor and the legislature, through the Appropriations Committee, the Ways and Means Committee, will spend that money the way that that money has historically been spent, and requires all of you on this call to handle your politics the way you handled it before, by making sure you talk to your state legislators, your senators, and of course your governor about how to access that money. The second way that it comes down is through grants that you can apply for if you're a governmental entity directly to each one of the federal departments. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Burney in a minute to take you through that, but essentially, just to keep this in mind, these investments are in roads, bridges, airports, ports, and waterways. Most of that money is going to come through the Department of Transportation and go to the state of Louisiana, to the ports, the airports, and the Department of Transportation. And so those of you, for example, Baton Rouge Airport's already got money. The New Orleans Airport has got money. Alexandria's already got money on the airport side. Then you're going to have clean air and clean water. So in Louisiana, you guys, we have an oil and gas industry. Unfortunately, the industry, like many other industries, left their trash behind, and they created Superfund sites or brownfield sites, or they created what we call abandoned orphan wells. There's a substantial amount of money to clean that up, and that's really important, not just to urban areas, but to rural areas as well. As you know, we have a huge rural population in the state of Louisiana. We have a lot of hunting, a lot of fishing going on. The water's dirty. If kids are sucking lead out of lead pipes, we got a huge problem. So that money's coming down through EPA. Then on top of that, as Troy said, we have high-speed internet. Everybody in the world has got to have access to knowledge. You can't have it if you don't have technology, and there's no technology without laying fiber optic cable. So the state of Louisiana is going to get a bucket load of money to do that. The next piece of this is to make sure that we are creating a clean energy economy and getting ready for what the future is bringing us. Louisiana is poised to really benefit from the transition into a clean energy economy. And as automobile companies start to transition into building cars that are operated by batteries, there are major manufacturers that are opening up battery plants all across the South, providing thousands and thousands of really high-paying jobs. You have to have people that build the component parts to the batteries. And we actually have a couple of announcements that are benefiting Louisiana right now. A company called Solvay has a plant that's in Vidalia and another one in Gonzales that's actually participating in this as well. And then finally, as we move into another part of the clean energy economy, we'll get into alternative fuels. Louisiana should be leading it because we are an energy state. And so we have all of these opportunities available to us. And by the way, there have been billions of dollars that have already been sent to Louisiana with specific projects that we can highlight for you, especially HBCUs as well. I met with the president of Southern the other day at the request of the Congressman. I met last week with the president of Dillard, and we'll meet with them again. I'm in constant contact with Dr. Ferret from Xavier. And of course, Ricky Gallo, who runs Grambling, is a dear friend, making sure that they're a part of growing the economy in a way that matters to us most. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan right now, if you don't mind, so he can take you through with our slide deck more specifics. But let me say this. There is a document called build.gov. And on that, that's a document that my team put out that has every program that's available in this entire bill. It's a $1.2 trillion bill. There are 375 programs. 125 of them are brand new, and it tells you how to apply for that money and put yourself in a really good position to win. Let me end with this. The president believes that the way that we're going to win in America is to win together, to build together, to do great things together, because that's the only way that we can do them. If we're divided, if we have a partisan lens to what we're doing, we're just not going to get where we're going. And so he wants to make sure that if you apply for this money, you do it in a way that has equity in mind. Equity means making sure that everybody, urban, rural, white, Black, Hispanic, are involved, especially working folks. Secondly, he wants to use products that are made in America, because that's the thing that creates the incentive to actually have manufacturing jobs that the towns that we have in Louisiana, and all of you know what many of them that have basically gotten hollowed out because we were making things overseas, we're going to start making them back so that we can rebuild those communities and keep our families where we've wanted them to be. The third part of it is to think about climate. I don't need to sell anybody in Louisiana about the danger of sea level rise, or the fact that our coast is gone away, or the fact that we're going to get beat to death by another hurricane sooner rather than later. So when we build back, we got to build back stronger and better, which is what all the levee systems, are about. And of course, there's a substantial amount of money from NOAA to do that final thing. And then finally, to make sure that we have high paying jobs that really pay attention to working men and women. Now, this president is the most pro-union president. Louisiana's a right to work state. We understand all of that stuff, but at the end of the day, you got to make sure that we're building things with people that are qualified, that know what they're doing, that can build generational wealth and can reach back through apprenticeships and teach people how to get to work. And he thinks that the best way to do that is through unions. And we're working on that to make sure that even if you can't do that, that the working conditions, the pay, the way that things are done are actually friendly, because he wants to build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. Now, people in Louisiana understand this, but trickle-down economics does not work. Giving a tax break to billionaires so that they don't pay a tax rate that's consistent with what nurses and firefighters do, take all the money and cut everything else. That's not a good pathway to success. And this president thinks that if you invest this money in infrastructure, you'll grow the economy. If you grow the economy, you can protect our domestic security, and you can protect our national security, because nobody will ever challenge us, not at home and not abroad. That's a 32,000-foot sketch. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to bring it a little bit closer to the ground and then answer any questions that you all might have. And again, Congressman, thank you so much for convening everybody from the great state of Louisiana. Ryan.
Hey, I hope everybody can see the screen. We are gonna just walk through a quick high-level slides that really just kind of double tap on what the Congressman and Mitch laid out, which is obviously the bill is very broad, and it covers all types of infrastructure. We talked about clean water, high-speed internet, EV charging network, of course, roads and bridges, rail, hopefully, which Louisiana will see some expansion here in the next few years, thanks to the work of Senator Cassidy and Congressman Carter. And then, of course, more resilient infrastructure, not just the levees and coastal expansions, but building resilience across our power grid, for example, which we know is particularly vulnerable in a state like Louisiana. The next slide is just a highlight of the numbers that Mitch laid out. 375 programs, 125 of them are new. The way this works is about 60% of the money flows to the states through formulas. They're usually population-based formulas, but sometimes specific programs like the amount of money for lead pipes that flows to the state will be based on how many lead pipes there are. The amount of money for the internet and broadband access is based on how many people are technically unserved or underserved by existing providers. And so that is where a lot of the initial money has flowed in this first year, 15 months. About 40% are discretionary. So those are all the programs that local governments apply for directly, like the RAISE program in the transportation space, or the mega grants program that we were just able to announce in recent weeks. As Mitch really laid out, it's an open book test in terms of what you need to have in the criteria to be successful in applying for federal funds. Compliance with Buy American rules, creating good paying jobs, union jobs wherever possible, equity, both in terms of racial equity and making sure that we have an environmental justice lens on the projects, building resilience in the infrastructure and in the planning, and then making sure that we're bringing everybody along, including in Louisiana, that includes tribal communities, which have a set aside, but also great opportunities on the discretionary grant side. I'm going to skip through a couple of these just on the top line of what Louisiana has gotten to date. $4.1 billion in the first 15 months, over $2.3 billion for roads and bridges. That's primarily through formulas that the state legislature then allocates with DOTD. So I see a couple senators here on the screen. That money has flowed through the infrastructure law to the state. It's about 30 to 40% more than would normally flow prior to the infrastructure law. The other important thing here is there's zero local match required on what is called off-system bridges, which are the bridges that are in, traverse through our cities and parishes in Louisiana that are off the highway system. And so we're really trying to incentivize states to do more to repair those off-system bridges that are the smaller bridges in communities that desperately need repair. Record money for transit across the state. Lots of money through waterways and ports, particularly through the Corps of Engineers. And then some through MARAD, which is a Department of Transportation agency that deals with port infrastructure. Airports get money two different ways. They get money in Louisiana by formula. So every airport, no matter how large or small, about 3,000 of them nationwide, get some amount of money thus far. And then there are also competitive programs that I know that a couple of Louisiana airports are competing for right now, and we should find out more in the next couple of weeks. And then, as Mitch mentioned, we have money to both connect people to fiber and high-speed internet where there is not access. There's also an affordable connectivity program that is basically a subsidy that matches a $30 a month plan that the providers, the internet service providers provide, so that you basically have high-speed internet for free if you're 200% of the poverty level or below, or are part of other government programs. We have a long way to get more people enrolled in Louisiana, and that's something that you can all help with. A couple of the project spotlights to date. Obviously, we mentioned Secretary Buttigieg is in Lake Charles today for the Calcasieu River Bridge. That's one of the largest awards the state has gotten so far. In Southwest Louisiana as well, there's major protection levy. The river parishes, the lakeshore protection also got funding for Senator Peacock there. The Shreveport Healthcare District got money in the RAISE program, which is really just kind of reconnecting that downtown biomedical corridor in Shreveport. And then in the kind of heart of the district, between the New Orleans to Baton Rouge, hopefully future rail line, there have been some funded projects to help with train stations and some developments there. Those are just a few examples. Don't want to belabor that point. To Mitch's point about Made in America, one of the great benefits of all this federal funding is that we're trying to incentivize the private sector. Over 800,000 manufacturing jobs created to date. In Louisiana, there's been an increase in manufacturing outside of the energy sector, particularly in clean energy. And so Mitch mentioned there's a company, Solvay, that's opening a facility to do battery component parts outside of Baton Rouge. There's a company called Syrah Technologies, which is opening in Vidalia, all getting funding from the infrastructure law to make those investments. We created a kind of one-stop shop resource that's called build.gov. And that is like the home base. We basically have a page of information on every one of the 375 programs. We have lots of resources on there, including technical assistance guides, a rural playbook for rural communities, information about workforce development funding, which I know is something that particularly local governments are very interested in. And we made it so that it's searchable like Google. So you don't have to know the name of the program to know what you're looking for. If you want to find out which programs are eligible for higher ed institutions, you can search education and all the education components will come up. You could search weatherization for all the weatherization programs, and that search function allows it to be available to you. As Mitch mentioned as well, we have the rural playbook. There are a number of programs in the law that basically allow us to waive or lower the local cost share for rural and underserved communities. And so we put a group of those programs up on the website as well, since we know that that is a particular barrier to access to funding. On cost share as well, the state actually allocated, Governor Edwards and the legislature allocated some money to the municipal league in Louisiana to help small governments with matching funds and also to help apply for grants. So that's something we asked all states to do, and Louisiana was one to do that. Jackson Wright in the governor's office is the infrastructure coordinator and helps work on that information with us each day. And then just looking ahead, and then we'll take questions. We have some pretty major milestones coming up for both programs underway and to be announced, which is that obviously in next week, the Port Infrastructure Development Program Notice of Funding Opportunity closes in April. There's a webinar next week. I know there's lots of ports that have interest there. The RAISE program, which is the most oversubscribed program, meaning there's a lot of interest, closes February 28th. So that's a pretty important one. We will next week also unveil the standards for the EV chargers, as well as how they will be made in America. So that's coming. Last week, DOT released safety awards, and the New Orleans Regional Planning Commission was one of those awards to help improve road safety. So again, lots of stuff coming and opportunities. Lots of stuff open right now in the energy space, particularly in grid, direct air capture. We have hydrogen hubs, which the state is competing for. That is also open and underway at this point. And then on the water side, most of the money, as Mitch mentioned, flows from EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, to the state through state revolving funds. There's drinking water, which is about obviously providing clean drinking water systems. And then there's a clean water revolving loan fund. In Louisiana, I think they're actually run separate by Department of Health and then by DEQ on the clean water side, because that's really about wastewater. But the state has record money here, and now for the first time, 49% of that money has to be granted out to low income or disadvantaged communities. And so that has traditionally only been a low interest revolving loan fund. And now it could be open for grants. And so I know I see our legislators here all nodding. There's record interest, particularly in Louisiana with the water report card now. And we want to make sure that we get as much of that funding down to the ground as possible. We'll be unveiling fiscal year 23 allocations in the next 2 months. And so there'll be a whole new tranche of funding that will be available. And then with that, we'll take questions, but there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of information is all on build.gov.
Ryan, thank you. Let me just jump in here and add a couple of more comments before we get to questions. Number one, to all the legislators on the call, and I've expressed this to the congressman and to both of the senators and to the governor and to all the mayors that I've talked to. 1.2 trillion is a lot of money. And there are fantastic opportunities, but the nation needs about 10 times more than that, which is to say that not everybody is going to get everything that they want. But the people that are going to win and the people that are going to do the best are the ones that organize themselves around a state strategy. And so I've really encouraged the congressmen and the senators and the governor, and I want to encourage you, the legislators, to really think strategically about how to use the bulk of this money. Now, some of this is going to be grant to individual communities in those communities where you legislators are from. So many of you, unlike the city of New Orleans, which is bigger than most state representative or Senate districts, you guys represent bunches of cities and towns that you can pull together to coordinate, because regional cooperation is really important. And then when you think about cooperating between and amongst your districts, even congressional districts, it's critically important when you're looking for funding like things for I-20, I-49, the Mississippi River Bridge, or whatever that might be. Secondly, the American Rescue Plan, which all of you are aware of, it's one of the reasons why Louisiana and other states are pushing the surplus. You can use that money, it's fungible in some ways as a federal match. And so the Biden administration is trying to make it as easy as possible for states to put the nickels together, which is one of the reasons why the incentive on the bridge thing is to build off-system bridges. So, you know, if you're moving up and down Highway 1 or Highway 311, and you're trying to build a little bit of bridge over the bayou, that's going to get 100% funding, as opposed to requiring a cost share, because the incentive is to make sure that we get into rural areas, particularly. This bill is a huge, huge, huge investment in rural America, in every aspect of it, and you should consider it that way. Finally, this, in the big tranches, like for fortifying the energy grid, for example, or laying down high-speed internet, or the electric vehicle charging plan, or what the state's going to do with the water. It requires the states to send the plans up here. And when we get the plans, we'll see if it covers everything. And if we bless it, we will then send the money back down. So it's really important that you check in with the infrastructure coordinator for the governor and the governor to see what the plans are, to make sure that the folks in your districts are covered by whatever one of the pots of money it is that he's asking for. Because once those plans get approved, I'm not saying they can't be amended, but that's where the tranche of money goes on based on what the application. So I would encourage you guys to reach out to the governor's office and ask them to share that with you, so that we can continue to keep everybody in the loop. And then finally, we will send each of you after this thing a list of all the projects that have been funded in Louisiana and the general, so that you can have a good sense of it's really billions at this point. I think the number for Louisiana is 20 billion over the past 2.5 or 2 years or so. And it falls in each one of these very, very categories. So you want to be strategic and thoughtful about it, because this is not going to come around. I don't think it's going to come around again in our lifetime. All right. Well, thank you for that. Questions, we'd be happy to try to answer them. And if we can't.
And real quickly, let me double down on what the mayor just said. The reality is, the reason we're doing this and the reason we have this opportunity is to make sure that everyone has every bite at the apple possible to identify ways to access one of the two tranches. One, operating with the governor's office and making sure that those formula funds, you've made your wish list and needs known. The other is making sure that we are making possible as much information and as many resources as possible to help, particularly our smaller cities and parishes, have the opportunity to coalesce with others to compete for grant dollars that will greatly enhance. While we are very proud that Democrats work together, and certainly the support of Senator Cassidy was monumental, these dollars will go for everyone in the state of Louisiana. Everyone will benefit from the resources, Democrat, Republican, and other. And that's how we build a better community, recognizing that we fight for all people. With that, Q&A.
Hey, everyone. Thank you all for coming today, and thank you to our administration partners for being here for this. We have time for about 3 brief questions before this ends today, and resources and all the links that Senior Advisor Landrieu and his staff shared with us today will be available to you post-presentation. In the chat, I see that Mr. Barrow Peacock asked, help is needed with getting approval to move forward with the I-49 inner-city connector through Shreveport. Any assistance would be greatly appreciated. If someone would like to respond to that.
Ryan, you want to take that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's something we can follow up on. It's under a record of decision timeline from Department of Transportation, so we're tracking it.
Yeah, they're in the middle of thinking about, you know, what the challenges are there and working through it. It's on their mind and on their list, and we can circle back on that when the record of decision is
Well, I appreciate that. As our article said, you're very impatient. This is something we've been working on for over decades now, and it's very frustrating, especially since the state has put up $100 million of state funding. That's always been a problem. The state show us the money, and we have, and now it's federal highways, and let's study another route, and delay after delay after delay. So we need your help, and
Okay.
at that level.
Thank you. So we'll look into it. Okay. Thank you. Sure.
And although, guys, I want to just real quickly, because I don't want to take time away from questions. Any question, if the clock runs out before we have a chance to get to you, remember, this is not a one and done. This is a continuum. We will create a formula where you can get those questions in, and the mayor and his team have graciously agreed to get answers that we will then get back to you. So this is not, don't feel frustrated if you don't have a chance to get your question today. This is going to be an ongoing process where we'll continue to use social media, the internet, and communications with all of the local parish and governmental authorities to get responses and answers back to you in real time.
Okay, we have Drayden Dunn up next.
Thank you so much, Honorable Landrieu, Congressman Carter, Ryan. Thank you so much. Shreveport, Bossier, African American Chamber of Commerce, Drayden Dunn. Just have a few questions and one comment. One comment would be, you mentioned everything with the airports, Alexandria, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. I don't think Shreveport has gotten funding outside the normal allocation through FAA. So that's something to put up on the board. But the second thing is, like, you talked about generational wealth. And obviously we're here to advocate for minority businesses. Since money is coming through the DOTD, one thing that's happening is they're getting a bottleneck with certifying Black-owned businesses. So what we need is more allocation to speed that process up. They cannot go for federal dollars if they're not certified. And right now they only have about 2 employees that are able to process these applications. They are partnering with 2 districts in South Louisiana that help with putting together and constructing these packages. But quite frankly, they need a little bit more help in allocation as it pertains to Justice 40 and what you're doing with President Biden at the White House and what he wants to do. We got to get more companies certified and accelerated to take on those opportunities. And my last comment would be on the consent decree here in Shreveport. We spent $400 million investing in our sewer infrastructure, and we are out of money. If we raise water rates anymore, it'll put 40% of our population at risk. So if we can divert some of those funds to our water and sewage department, that would be phenomenal, similar to the watershed initiative. Thank you.
All right, let me hit those 3 things real quick. First of all, we just an hour ago met in the Roosevelt Room with the leadership of the Minority Business Contractors Association of America and went through some of those issues. Many of those things are statewide, state-based. So, you know, Secretary Wilson and I know the governor are dialed into them. You should continue to talk to them about building generational wealth. Want to make sure those projects are broken up adequately so you can compete the way you need to. Want to make sure that the limits that are set in the SBA program for small businesses are right as well. And I would continue to chase that rabbit if you don't mind. Secondly, just yesterday, I mean, I noticed that the secretary and the governor, I don't know if the governor was there, we're talking about a road project that I know has federal funds in it right outside of Barksdale off of I-20. So we're kind of in it and around it. In terms of the water thing, I've spent, and so has Ryan, quite a lot of time in Jackson. And of course, you know, I'm from New Orleans, so I understand these issues well. There is something called the WIFIA loan that is available to cities like Shreveport when you're having challenges with your water plant. So you folks may want to look into that. That's coming out of EPA on the water side. President understands that. We were just, you know, in another part of the country, and we were talking about that as well. That's going to help reduce the need to raise rates higher than you have to, especially when we have challenged systems. But I can tell you this, I've never seen an issue cut across race and class and geography than clean water. And I mean, that's rural, urban, it's everywhere. And so it's a critical part of what it is that we're doing. And, you know, we'll keep an eye on the rest of it. So thank you for that.
Great. Okay, next I see one from Buck to Fay. One challenge we face is the difference between definitions of disadvantaged communities between the different agencies. It would be great if there were some standardization between the agencies.
100%. But if you can specify a little bit more, we'll make sure, because we always try to clean that up. I mean, I could go into all the technical stuff, but essentially one of my jobs is to get everybody singing off of the same page in the same hymn book at the same church. So let me know.
And on Justice 40, which is obviously particular to the climate, water, and clean energy provisions, as well as some of the DOT programs, there is a map now that there's a map now that outlines what areas are considered Justice 40 eligible. And so I would really recommend folks look at the climate and equity environmental justice screening tool, which is a map, to make sure that your community is there, because that is going to be one of the major metrics moving forward.
Yeah, the other thing, let me just mention this. I forgot to do this in my comments. One of many of these jobs that are going to be created by this $1.2 trillion, the hundreds of thousands of them will be able to be held and benefit American citizens that do not have a college degree. You do not have to have a college degree to engage in some of the high skill work that's going to be required, from laying fiber optic cable to the EV charging stations. And Louisiana is in a great position to take advantage of that. But one thing that we are not particularly good at, all of us collectively, and I'm speaking as a member that was in the legislature, of course, you know, I was lieutenant governor and mayor. I just don't think that our system for training workers is particularly good. It is a national problem, but it is somewhat of a locally focused solution. Like, what's the thing that's happening here? Who are the folks that need work? Where are we going to train them? I remember when I was lieutenant governor visiting Sowella in Lake Charles, which was really a great example of how to do it well. In other words, in that community and technical college, there was a rig, there was the interior of a plane, because that's in fact what happened on the physical place where Sowella was. You could walk out of that and walk over and start retrofitting planes, or you could walk over and start working on a rig. When we get into this new clean energy economy, we're going to have to reorganize our worker training programs and make sure that the skills that are being used by people in Louisiana are immediately transferable to the new skills that are being required. And the president wants to make sure that we are all partnering with you guys. And if you haven't thought about this as a legislator, I want to put this on you. So Gary, I see you on the call. You know, Mayor Bill Yatt, I see you, a couple of other guys. Y'all should really be thinking through this a little bit in the communities that you live in.
And team, listen, we're coming on the hard stop shortly. But remember that there will be a series in the slide deck that Ryan shared with you, of many answers to questions on how to access grants. One of the most significant parts of this exercise was to make sure that we develop a robust series of directions on how to access the competitive side, that you will have access to that. We will be refining this, adding a series of FAQs, making sure that we reach out, that we hear from you, because many of the questions that you have, many other cities across the country have similar questions. Many other parishes throughout Louisiana will have similar questions. So as we wind down, I want to thank everyone for being here today. I particularly want to thank our senior advisor to the President of the United States, Mitch Landrieu, and his team for so graciously being with us and generous with their time and answers and resources. And I will begin, and as I began, by saying that this is a continuum. This is not a one and done. We will continue to feed information throughout the state of Louisiana to all of the parishes to let you know how to access these resources. And of course, our team will be available to answer questions and assist where possible as well.
Troy, you know, just maybe somebody can help me with this. When I travel around the country, these people tell me that I have an accent, and I don't understand that. And they, like when I was in New Jersey, they said I talk funny. And, when I was talking about their parishes, they kept saying we don't have parishes, and she kind of told me they call that things counties. So it's been a learning curve for me as I get around the country and try to talk.
Well, we think they talk funny.
That's what, well, I can't say that, but they think I talk funny. So I'm just leaving that out there for you guys, you know.
Good deal. Any parting comments? Otherwise, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Know this, that we have resources that we've never had before. We want to make sure that we take every opportunity to get them to your communities, to deal with your issues, to deal with those things that you have been plagued with for many, many years without opportunity or resources to resolve them. We now have an opportunity. We have to make sure that we're vigilant, that we're prepared, and that we're pushing forward to make our needs known so we can get the resources to you.
All right, you guys. Thank y'all so much. God bless you. Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate it.
God bless you all. God bless you.
Thank you so much for your service, guys.